Assalamu alaikum. Tonight I'm going to try to tackle a very important, sensitive subject that I've been dealing with perhaps for as long as I can remember being a Muslim, only seriously dealing with the past 10 years or so. I'll preface this by saying that you don't meet many people, women, female people, as a Muslim, who are definitive role models. I think I can count on one hand in the 41 years that I've been a Muslim, count them on one hand, but one stands out. And her name was Amma. And I met her in Cairo, and she was a graduate of Cairo University, the Arabic language department. And she wore the black niqab, and she was a very active mother, married, 3 children. And she would spend so much time. She had written and published 2 books. One was a grammar book that was used. I think the only niqab woman who ever published a book that was used all over in every institute of learning Quran. Grammar is something you have to know. And usually it terrifies people, I guess, because when they were in school, they were probably not taught by the most merciful teachers, because from what I understand, the Arabic teacher was the only one who could beat the kids. And was that some kind of a plot to make the children hate Arabic? Yeah, probably it was. Anyway, she wanted to be different, and she was a very kind, loving, excellent teacher. The last book she wrote was 700 pages of the history of women. I actually have it on a PDF. Out of her memory, I should perhaps give you excerpts from it throughout the coming year. This wonderful woman more or less just disappeared. Well, we know why. I mean, she made some mistakes that were not politically correct, so I won't say more than that. But before that happened to her, she was considered to be a major scholar, right up there with the Shuyukh of Al-Azhar, although she didn't go to Al-Azhar. She was more or less, I don't want to say a loose cannon. I've been called a loose cannon too, and I guess she was, because she knew as much as they do, only she would argue with them. And that was one of the reasons why we don't hear from her anymore, although she's alive, She's alive. Her family visits her. That's all I'm going to say about that. But one of the things she did was she would challenge the tafsir on the basis of her immense knowledge. 33 hadiths she used to bring forward the subject of tahara and what is the real meaning of tahara, and why does that affect so much the status quo. And then, of course, she would bring forth all the proofs where anyone with a brain could realize that she was quite correct. Only they don't want to change their minds because, as you know, it's an old boy network. You know about old boy networks? They're everywhere. They're not just in the Arab world. Surgeons have them. I know so many medical professionals, they cover each other's backs. So it's almost impossible to win a lawsuit with the medical profession. It doesn't matter Egypt or America. It's too technical, you see. How can you challenge these surgeons when you don't know anything at all about surgery? And then you get lawyers that are, well, I don't want to go into lawyers because I would never use a lawyer. I would use Allah in my dua. But anyway, let's get back to the pertinent issue of the day. Am I going to do it? Why not? I'm 78. If I don't do it now, nobody's going to do it. Well, yeah, maybe when Amal gets out. Anyway, This is Surat Waqiyah. And if you go to page 537 of the Arabic Quran, the Mus'haf, it's right at the top of the right hand of the page. I will read it to you and I will translate it and then we'll discuss it. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنه لقرآن كريم في كتاب مكنون لا يمسه إلا المطهرون. Is that all? Yeah, that's all. 3 verses. Let's translate them. Verily, it is a noble Quran, and it is a book enclosed. No one touches it except the mutahharun. Oh, mutahharun. Do you see here? Ta-ha-ra. Oh, yes, the tahara. I know what that means. Tahara means cleanliness. So from this short 3 tiny little verses, let's say them again so we can see just how tiny they are. First verse, 3 words. Innahu la Qur'anun kareem. Second verse, 2 words. Fi kitabim maknoon. Third verse, 1, 2, 3, 4 words. La yamassuhu illa al-mutahharun. So I want to take this with you baby steps by step. And I always like to bring the Arabic so you'll understand the Arabic. I like to include especially the letters and their significance. So we have here the word al-mutahharun. You know what it means to be tahir, right? That means you are not in the state of najasa where you don't pray. You want to make wudu so that you can be clean. However, in the early days, way early days, one of the teachers, my blind friend from Al-Azhar, she would actually, you're not going to believe me when I tell you this, but it was only the Saudi shuyukh 40 years ago who would actually say this is referring to the angels in heaven who hold the book. The Lawhun Mahfuz is way up above the heavens, being held by angels. So Saudi would say, Saudi shuyukh, way back, would say, these angels are called mutahharun because they are totally pure. Now, my Azhar friend back then would say, it cannot refer to women because women, in the sense of tahara, will be called mutatahharun, meaning they fluctuate between the state of purity and the state of impurity in any regard, whether it be menstrual cycle or what. But then other scholars began to say, no, this is referring to the spiritual state, because no Muslim can ever be considered impure by having a menstrual cycle. Well, what does that mean? Well, I'm coming to what it means. It's not just forbidding intercourse. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that's good. Orthodox Jews do the same thing. When a woman has menstrual cycle, there is no intercourse. 100% no. How about no prayer? Well, I say that's a wonderful, we say a rukhsa. It's a license for you to relax. because sometimes you're not feeling very well, and sometimes you have pain, and sometimes you just can't concentrate on what you're doing. It depends on different women have different difficulties when they're in menstruation. However, the real issue here is, are you allowed to touch the Quran? So, as I tell you, over 40 years ago when I first came to Egypt, this subject was not a subject at all. All the shuyukh would say, no, you're not. And I remember thinking, and I had no knowledge, this was just totally fitra, that might be counterproductive. Why are you supposed to be being punished because you were created a woman and you have menstrual cycles? Why would that make you unable to touch the Quran? And then as the days and weeks and months and years wore on, I noticed that some women were wearing gloves in the institutes of Quran memorization that I would go to, and they would wear gloves. Others would have what they called a ha'il. You would take a pencil or a pen, and you would turn the pages with this thing, this pencil or pen. Then I discovered that the Jews, the yeshiva, the Orthodox, those that live in the Torah, they just study all day and all night. They literally have a wooden stick that looks like a finger. It's a long, thin wooden stick that they use for no other reason than they just use it to turn the pages. They're all men, so it has nothing to do with the period. So I started to analyze this subject. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know. I just felt there was something wrong here. Watching these women with gloves and using pencils, and then seeing that it resembles Jewish Orthodox rabbis when they study their Torah with their little... You look it up, okay? Look it up on Google and you will see what I'm talking about. It's a long, thin wooden stick with like a hand with a finger. Oh, I'm laughing, but it's not at all funny. Because my friend Amo brought forward 33 hadiths in which she proved that you can read the Quran in your period, because there's nothing to prove otherwise. Now, let's just take one fiqh issue, because the madahib, don't believe them when they say there's no disagreements. There are some. But Ibn Taymiyyah was always considered to be the renegade, the rebel, the one that everyone either loved or hated. And his fatwa was, in Islam, anything is allowed unless it is specifically forbidden by nusus. Nusus means text, written text, wherein something is forbidden. So my friend spent a lot of effort in going over, screening every single hadith, everything that can bolster her, I don't want to say her opinion, because this is really not an opinion. This is scholarship, wherein you cannot prove otherwise that a woman cannot touch or read Quran in her period. Now, as I told you, this will not be mainstream accepted, because the mainstream people, they usually hate Ibn Taymiyyah because he didn't go along with the mainstream opinions, which is why he died in prison. Now, what she did was go over the Arabic words. That's not so difficult, because then you have the grammar and you can prove that pretty easily. But she also went over all the hadith that has been mistakenly used to bolster these opinions that it's forbidden. I think the number was, I have her book on PDF. I could ask her sister. She has 4 sisters that are also religious teachers, to point me to the exact one, because as you know, my eyes, and it's difficult for me. I mean, if it were a book on paper, I'd just use a magnifying glass, but on the screen, it's really difficult for me to go over this book because I do have it on PDF. And if I'm doing due diligence, I should probably have already done this by now and translated all of them, because she only wrote in Arabic, and then just put them on here while I still have the breath of life in me, because it's a very, very, very important topic. All of these things that are forbidden due to menstruation make sense to me. And I'll tell you why. And I might tell you the last one that doesn't come from her. It comes from me. And perhaps it may be, some of you who are overly sensitive about things like this, well, you're just going to have to stop being that way. Block your ears. No, I don't mean that. I mean, the things that are forbidden, one of them is prayer, and the other is sexual intercourse. Now, sexual intercourse, by virtue of what it does, it wouldn't be proper to have that behavior when you're menstruating. Because when you're menstruating, all of that blood is supposed to come out, not get pushed back in through sexual intercourse. I don't think I have to go on more about what I'm describing to you. I think we're all adults here. So of course, why would you ever want that? Another thing is the prayer. Some people would try to argue with me and say, well, and I would say, wait, when you pray, what do you do when you're in sujood? You put your face on the ground. And by virtue of the fact of the position of the sujood, your backside it's up. In other words, it's not right side up. You're going upside down. So once again, do you really want that to go back inside you when it's supposed to come out? No. So you can make all the izkar that you want to when you're menstruating. It's not going to hurt you. But to tip your body upside down, no. To me, it makes perfect, I don't use the word logic, because sometimes you're not supposed to use logic. You're supposed to just, take at face value the hadith if you know Arabic and you've studied the meanings of the words and the grammar and all of that. It's really not that difficult to read tafsir and understand it. But when you get so many men with conflicting opinions, and all of them want to be right. That's why I follow Imam Shafi'i. Well, I follow Ibn Taymiyyah, but if you want to talk about the 4 madhabs, Imam Shafi'i always said he wanted the other person to be right. He would love them to be right in their opinions, because you're not in this for winning a game. This is not a debate. These are the words of Allah and His Messenger. And we have to be very careful that our own egos or our own interpretations don't cloud over what's really legitimately, textually verifiable. So I thought, now is the time, because no one is talking about this. One of the primary issues, and if we want to say women's issues, this is the biggest one. It's the biggest one, this whole thing about touching Quran. Here's another thing that is not textually verified. You do not have to be in wudu to read Quran. Where did this come from? sometimes I think, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, but sometimes I feel there are enemies that don't want you to get near the Quran, don't want you to read the Quran, try to keep you away from the Quran. And who are these enemies? Allahu Alam. It's 20 minutes now. So I hope, I pray, I ask Allah that my words will enter the hearts of those who are willing to receive the truth, because what I've told you, I believe is the correct way. And if you have any differences with me, as long as they're backed up by scholarship, I welcome them. And you can type them on the comments. But I think it was necessary that we get this done while I'm still alive. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.